Okay, so thanks for coming. Just a show of hands, who's from the social casino niche in some form or another? Okay, that's most of you guys. Okay, so this is a lecture I give almost every Casual Connect. It gets updated every quarter, essentially, and the idea is to educate the industry as to what Playtika thinks is going on in the social casino niche. I'm Elad KUSHNIR. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Playtika. Let's go ahead. Okay, so just to give you a sense of who Playtika is, Playtika was founded in 2010. We are the global category leader in social casino. 10 games, we're on 13 platforms, and we recently passed 1,000 employees across the globe. We have 12 offices across the globe, anywhere from California to Japan to Argentina, and we're headquartered in Tel Aviv, and we have several offices in Eastern Europe. Okay, so just to give some context about social casino, we obviously have to talk about the gaming market in general and to kind of scale down into the social casino niche. Most of you probably know that the gaming industry is growing very quickly. This year, or last year in 2014, it generated about $84 billion in revenue, which is quite a large number. The market's growing, expected to grow to about $106 billion in 2017. So we're in the right industry, we're in the right niche. We'll talk about that in a moment. North America, Europe, South America, Asia Pacific. So most of us gaming industry people are focusing constantly on the North American market. It's where a lot of the money is. And the point of this slide is to show you what's going on in Asia Pacific. Asia Pacific is by far the largest gaming region in the world, generating above $13 billion in mobile gaming revenue in 2014. Very relevant for the social casino talk. We'll drill down a little bit into it a little later on. South America is still lacking in numbers, but it also means there's a lot of potential in South America that hasn't been taken into the market yet. We're very bullish about South America as well. Okay, so a little bit about the social casino market itself. So I want to give some context about social casino. Social casino, there's a story of our two founders, Robert and Uri, who founded the company, and they had this crazy idea of creating a slot machine on a social network called Facebook, and there's going to be no gambling in the game. And they walked around in Tel Aviv, which is where they're from, and tried to raise money for this crazy idea. And everybody threw them out the door. They said, who the hell is going to play a game, a social slots game, when there's no gambling? And obviously, everybody who threw them out the room is very depressed these days. So just some context, social casino is about taking casino-style games, poker, slots, bingo, etc., putting them on social and mobile platforms, eliminating the gambling element, so we are a completely free-to-play industry, and we're a free-to-play company. We're substantially more similar to everybody here in the room, to any of the real money gaming companies, the real money gambling companies. Okay, so we're an amazing market. When Robert and Uri founded Playtika in 2010, which is a little on the left side of the graph, there was no money in this niche. In 2014, the niche generated $2.84 billion of revenue. Which is quite amazing because we are a niche. We're by definition not a mass market product or not a mass market niche itself. There's a certain limited amount of players that want to play our games, and that niche generated $2.84 billion and is expected to grow to a little bit above $4.4 billion in the next few years. So there's a lot of growth still coming. Okay, social casino in the context of other gaming categories. So social casino on average generates about 10% of all mobile gaming revenue in the world, which is quite amazing. When I saw this stat initially and then double-checked that it's real, we were quite amazed by it. Obviously, you see iPad is doing very well for social casino, so is Google Play and iPhone. So it's quite a substantial niche, monetizes very well. Okay, so there's one slide, if there's one slide that I want you to focus on today, it's this slide. This is a slide that gives a little bit about the context of social casino, because social casino is very different in many ways than any other social gaming category. It's essentially different because social casino is a spin-off of a very mature industry. The casino industry itself has been, it's over 100 and some years in the form that we know it today. We didn't invent slots or bingo or poker. These are games that are played offline. And social casino, like I showed you in the slide, we took away the gambling, but we're still casino games. So there are 4 types of companies, or players as I call them, that play in this industry. First and foremost, it's the offline casino suppliers. These are the guys, some of their logos are up there. I just put some examples of the big guys, IGT, WMS, Aristocrat, Bally's. These are the guys who manufacture the actual slot machines when you walk into the casino floor. So you're walking into Caesar's Palace, you go play on a slot machine. These are the guys who manufacture these machines. They're very large companies. They're all billion-dollar companies and more. They're very mature companies. Some of these companies have been around for decades and decades. And they're in the social casino niche. All of these above have acquired social casino companies with the goal of taking their content and putting them on social casino. And we'll talk a little bit about why they're doing this in a moment. The second are the offline casino operators. So these are the actual casinos themselves. When you walk into a casino, the guys on top create the machines, but these guys are the ones who actually own the real estate and operate the casino itself. Caesars Entertainment, one of our parent companies, Foxwoods, MGM, Churchill Downs, which we'll talk in a moment, not a very well-known logo, but albeit a player in the industry. Then there's the real money online casino guys, 888, Novomatic, bwin, Playtika. These are companies that are in the real money gambling side of the business online. And last but not least are social gaming operators. These are companies like Zynga, which you know, GSN, Storm 8, Plumbee is another example. These are essentially companies that were born in the social or mobile casino, mobile space, not necessarily the casino space. And then took some of their games into the social casino genre. So why is this relevant? This is relevant, like I said before, mainly because social casino is an offshoot of a different industry, and the type of market forces that affect it are a little different than every other gaming genre. Each of these types of companies brings to the table a different competitive advantage. The offline casino suppliers bring to the table something we call proven content. So they've been creating slot machines for decades and decades. They have slot machines, like in every type of game, some slot machines are better than others. They have a portfolio of slot machines. They own that IP from the offline world. They pick their best slot machines from the offline world, translate them into a social casino environment, and then put them up here. And at the end of the day, this is very much a content-driven niche. So they're by far our scariest competitors. We respect them very much, and we keep an eye out on them very much, but they have a distinct competitive advantage, which we, by the way, don't. Offline casino operators, these are, like I said, the actual casinos themselves. These guys have 2 competitive advantages. One is brand equity. So obviously all of you have heard of Caesar's Palace, or most of you have heard of Caesar's Palace. So when we launched Caesar's Slots, that brand equity helped us reach the market, and it had a lot of value to it. The other, and probably a more prominent competitive advantage, is the cross-promotional potential. Essentially, these casinos have a lot of foot traffic in the casinos day by day. Caesar's Palace, for example, has 35,000 people walk through their lobby every day. If we, as Playtika, as a daughter company of Caesar's, could convince these players to download our games, there's a lot of potential because they're, by definition, part of our target market. Then there's the real money online casino guys. These are guys who have digital casino experience. They've been creating casino games on a digital platform for over a decade. All the companies and logos that you see up there, and there are many more, are very mature, financially stable companies that can take their games and put them on the social platforms. The interesting thing is that had you asked me a couple years ago who the scariest competitors would be, I would say these guys, real money online casinos. It still hasn't happened. That's a whole lecture within itself for another debate. But we're keeping out an eye on them. We really think they're going to break into our niche at some point more substantially than they have until today. But again, that's their competitive advantage. And then there's the social gaming operators. These are companies that were born on social and mobile platforms. They know all the nuances. They know how to do user acquisition. They know how to increase retention, et cetera, et cetera. They don't necessarily come from the casino side of the business, but they've entered the business and they're doing very well. Zynga, everybody knows. Zynga is very much a social casino company. If you look at their revenues, put together the social casino titles, you'll see it's a substantial amount of their revenues. And it's actually growing as time happens in terms of their portfolio of games. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the competitive landscape and the pyramid structure of the industry of the niche. So this is an analysis that we do for ourselves. This is how we look at the world. The tier 1 companies are listed above. These are 5 companies, each of which owns more than 5% market share in the social casino niche. Playtika, which is us, owns 22% of the market, of the global market, social, mobile. Then IGT, Zynga, Big Fish, and GSN. These are all companies who are doing very well. Big Fish was recently acquired by Churchill Downs. We'll talk about that deal in a few minutes. IGT, which is this offline slots manufacturer, which bought Double Down Casino a little bit about after we were acquired. Zynga, you all know. And GSN, which recently pushed up into tier 1 by acquiring Bash Gaming. GSN is a mature company that already did some social casino, but kind of pushed even stronger into the niche by acquiring a very good bingo game. Then there's tier 2. So tier 2, there are about 8 or 9 or 10 companies in there, owning about 22% of the market collectively. Some of these logos you may know. You'll see here some of the offline slot manufacturers, some of the social gaming operators, but you'll see Tencent and Boya, or 2 names that maybe not everybody knows. Tencent and Boya, both Chinese companies. Tencent, a mega conglomerate that does a lot of things, but also does social casino games. They own WeChat, which is the Chinese version of WhatsApp, and they're pushing their games very strong on it. And Boya, which is very similar to Zynga in many senses, because it has the most successful Chinese poker game in China and in Southeast Asia in general. And then there's tier 3. There's a lot of logos that should go in there as well. If I didn't get your logo, I'm sorry. Come up to me, I'll put it there next time. But there are hundreds of companies in this tier 3. And these guys, some of these are making real money. Maybe not hundreds of millions of dollars, but tens of millions of dollars definitely. But it's definitely going to be really hard to break into that tier 2 or tier 1. And it's actually getting really, really hard with time. It gets harder and harder, mainly from many various reasons, including CPI costs and the competitive advantages of the big guys. But I'm not here to discourage. I'm just here to say that it's really hard in the tier 3. And some people do move up. Some people do move up. OK, let's talk a little bit about trends and realities in the niche. OK, mobile continues to dominate. I don't think I'm teaching anybody something new here. But what we're seeing is that it's getting stronger and stronger. 2014, 56% of revenues in social casino came from mobile, and the rest came from Facebook. That trend is getting stronger and stronger. So actually, Playtika in March of 2014 became from a Facebook-first company, became a mobile-first company. So we kind of peaked and past that 50% of our revenue started coming in from mobile. It's true for the industry. I think we're even a little stronger than 56% on mobile. We see that trend that's going to continue. Our estimates internally, assuming the pace will continue at a similar pace, is by the end of 2015, social casino will be 75% of revenues will come from mobile. And we think that's going to get stronger and stronger. And this is not because of anything but the fact that mobile is growing. The opportunity is getting larger, more and more people adding smartphones into their pockets, and the potential is growing. OK. So this is a slide that if you've been to my previous lectures, you've seen different variations before. I've been talking about regional focus for quite a while in social casino, and I think I changed the slide up a bit this time, because I think what we're seeing now is what we thought was potentially going to happen is happening, which we're happy about. And the fact of the matter is that there's going to be a lot of regional growth specifically. What does that mean? So companies are creating social casino games in terms of local games for local markets. In every local market, there's a different variation of a different casino game, which comes from the offline world into the online world, and we're seeing that happening. So a lot of companies, including ourselves, are starting to focus on regional content, which includes things like localization, culturalization, but also developing games for local markets. There's some great companies out there that were born around this idea. GameSmart, who's sitting right here, which we like very much, and there's Akamon that does social casino for Latin America as well, and PlaySpace does Latin America as well. There's some companies doing some great work, and we think that's a niche that's going to grow, and we're going to see happen more and more. Okay, everybody knows this slide, right? Or everybody knows the pain behind this slide, at least. So CPIs are going up. They're going up for the entire industry, but they're also going up even more in the social casino industry. So if you look at the Fixu CPI index, which we follow closely, an average install costs anywhere between $1 and $2 for the entire gaming industry or mobile gaming industry. But in social casino, the numbers are substantially higher. And you look, what we did is our research department looked at the trends in the market, and what you see up there is essentially what happened from January 2014 to December 2014, and you'll see the numbers going up. iOS installs costing an average of $5 in 2014. That's an average of that entire year. The end of the year was even more expensive. Facebook installs for Facebook Canvas games, about $4, and then Android games costing about $3. That trend's going to continue. It's not great for anyone, not for the big guys or the small guys, but it's a reality of what we live in, and it's something you have to know if you're in this niche. Okay, branded content. So branded content is something that's, again, a reality that comes mainly from the offline casino world. So if you walk into a casino in the offline world, you're going to be seeing branded slot machines. You'll walk into Caesar's Palace. One of the first machines you'll see is a Sex and the City slot machine. So the offline slots industry has been pushing branded content for a long time on their slot machines. This is happening more and more in social casino as well. We're doing it as well. We're not doing it as aggressively as some of the other guys, Zynga, IGT, and GSN. Just some examples up there, but whoever has money to do it is trying to do it. There's really a question about the incremental value of adding a brand to a slot machine. We're not convinced. We're trying. It's hard to measure what incremental value gets added by adding a brand to a slot machine. But we're definitely trying. Elvis, which is the last branded slot machine that we did, is doing very well for us. Again, but we're not sure of the incremental value. Of course, this is a trend that we're seeing across the gaming industry. Kim Kardashian Goes to Hollywood. If you don't know that game, you're in the wrong conference. It's doing very well recently. Again, another branded content. We think some people are claiming this might be a solution to the CPI problem. Bring in a big brand, and then maybe you don't need to spend as much on your marketing. I guess in some cases it's true, in some cases it's not. I think in the context of Kim Kardashian, it was done very correctly. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about mergers and acquisitions in the social casino niche. Again, in the mergers and acquisition side of the business of social casino, we're very much affected by the offline casino world. If you look as to who's buying who, it's the offline guys buying the online guys. If I have to generalize, it's not 100% true 100% of the time, but that's what's happening. There were 2 deals in the last quarter. One, probably I think the largest deal in the social casino industry ever. Churchill Downs, which is an American company from the offline world that operate, I think, horse racing tracks in the US, acquired Big Fish Games for $885 million, which is quite an astounding number if you think of it. Big Fish is, by definition, in Tier 1 Essentially, Churchill Downs, what they did was they took a kind of a company with an offline base and said, okay, how do we join the social casino experience that's going on? And they bought into the future. It's something some are calling a legacy pivot. So that's what Churchill Downs was about. And then Imperus acquired DWIP. DWIP is another Israeli company for $100 million also this quarter. I think this is a more interesting slide. So this is a slide that summarizes the social casino deals, or at least the big social casino deals in 2014. So there was $1.24 billion of M&A in social casino during 2014. I think it's the biggest year ever. And I think this trend is going to continue, driven by the fact that some of these offline companies are looking to enter the online side of the business, and specifically the social casino side of the business. And I think that's a trend. And so if you have a social casino company and you're in that tier 3, your future potential buyers are probably either us or some of the offline guys. Okay, let's quickly recap what we talked about. The gaming industry continues to grow very quickly. The general gaming industry going to peak at above $100 billion in 2017. In 2014, the APAC region generated $13.6 billion of mobile gaming revenue. If you're not looking at Asia, you're not looking in the right direction. You're going to miss the boat. And you need to spend time thinking about Asia, how you take your product into Asia, and it's quite a challenge. So 10% of the App Store revenues approximately comes from social casino, mostly on mobile. Social casino is dominated by 4 types of companies. We mentioned that before. Again, unlike other genres in the industry, we're very much affected from this offline side because we are an offshoot of of games that come from a different side of the world. Mobile is the present and the future. Like I said, we expect 75% of the business to come from mobile by the end of the year. Regional focus and fragmentation will become mainstream. We already see it happening. We're seeing it all the time. We've opened a few regional offices recently. Stay tuned for some of the cool things we're going to do in 2015 in the regional context. CPIs are growing. It's an issue. It's probably not going to end. Luckily, in the social casino world or in the social casino niche, if you know how to monetize your users, you can still buy ROI positive traffic. LTV is generally high, and the RPPU is generally high in social casino compared to other genres. But again, you need that cash in order to buy into the traffic. Last but not least, social casino, the M&A trend is going to continue, driven by this legacy pivot of offline companies buying social casino companies. We're going to continue seeing that happening. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. I hope you found this informative. If you have any questions, if you want to sell us a company or a technology or something, come up to me later on. I'll definitely listen. I'm not sure I'll write the check, but I'll listen. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, we have plenty of time for questions. So if you've got a question for Elad, raise your hand and I'll bring the microphone over. Well, they're all a bit shy, so maybe I'll ask it instead of going. I get the impression that certainly with slots, people have not necessarily a lot of affinity. In more traditional Facebook and social games, they tend to be serially monogamous. They'll play a game until they get bored with it, and then at that point they'll churn over. With slots, I kind of get the impression they'll pull a handle until they run out of coins, then change the next one, pull a handle until they've gone through. So how do you keep loyalty going and turn people into loyal players of one particular brand of a slot rather than churning through all of them?
I think that's actually a very relevant question. Thank you. I think, so Slotomania, let's take Slotomania for example. Slotomania is not a game. Slotomania is a platform. And essentially we drive new content into that platform regularly. We release a slot machine almost every week. We have 100 and some slot machines on Slotomania right now. So essentially if you're playing Slotomania and you're going through the leveling, you're leveling up, you're getting access to new content every week, and that's kind of one of our competitive advantages, is the ability to churn out consistently quality slot machines every week. We work at it very hard. It takes us about 3 to 4 months to create one slot machine. So you can imagine the pipeline that's going on, and we do that in both Slotomania, Caesar Slots, and House of Fun. So we have a so-called department in our company called the Slots Factory, which essentially churns out this content, and it's obviously very hard to keep it with a high quality all the time. That's the challenge.
Any more questions? Well, I'll move on to other questions then. Slot, like you said, you're not actually choosing the game mechanic yourself. There's slot machines have existed for a long sort of period of time. Do you ever see a time when your company will start inventing new play mechanics, or you're still going to follow traditional brick and mortar style games and emulate them online?
Okay, so that's a good question as well. I think we do already. We already innovate in the slot mechanics, but we still stick. There's a lot of features from the offline world. A slot machine can have dozens and dozens of in-real features. So there's a lot of way to mix and match these features in every slot machine and create a different user experience. But we, with the help of our amazing product teams, we do innovate on the slot mechanics as well. So it's something we do all the time.
We're not going to let you out of the room until you ask at least one question, so we're going to close the doors and bar you in. So please, who's going to be the person who raises their hand to ask a question? There we go. We've got our first one. You're allowed to get out if it's a good question. Okay.
I'm going to push out. Hi, Elad. Bobby Vojko from Avonhat. So, as a casino gaming company, you probably use a lot of business intelligence. Mm-hmm. What would be the advice for a younger company starting in the same space? How should they start their own business intelligence platform? What would they use? A third party? If it's a third party, who would you recommend, and so on? Thank you.
Okay, great. Good question. So yeah, of course, business intelligence is probably a super critical part of the infrastructure of a company in any niche, but I think most specifically in social casino. So we use our own BI tools mainly. It's a complex stack of technologies today that we've built in-house. I think for a small company, there's definitely some suppliers out there that can give you parts of the solution that you need. There's no one who, at least I know of, that can give 100% of the solution that you may need, and customization is always an issue as well. But there's definitely enough tools there to give you the basics. I won't mention any suppliers by name, not on stage at least. If you want, we can talk later on.
So you're pretty much on the fence about with branded IP, and suddenly every time I go to Vegas, every single slot machine I see is it's a Wheel of Fortune, or it's sort of Wonder Woman, or it's sort of something. So tell us your experience. Have you experimented with branded IP, and how did it work? You had some negative experience, or you just haven't tried much? Okay,
so yeah, so like I showed on the slide, we have tried it before. We haven't done it very aggressively. We have the content that we have licensed, or the brands that we have licensed, are specifically targeted to our target market. Again, it's really hard to define the incremental value of a branded slot machine. So our Elvis slot machine, if we had just put on a different character and with some other music, would it be better off or worse off? It really depends. Some of the data shows this, some of the data shows that. There is obvious value maybe in user acquisition. If you can use the brand on your banners, that might grab some attention from fans of that brand. But again, we're on the fence. We don't know which side of the fence we're on yet.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
So you put out a title every week, a new title, a new slots title every week. How do you move? Do you move users from the older titles to the new ones? Do you do a lot of user acquisition? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so again, Slotomania is a platform, so the users, depending on their level, get access to specific machines. Some of the machines we open to specific levels, some higher levels, some lower levels. So we don't force the users to move from one piece of content to another in Slotomania or any of our other games. It just gives them additional variety, and that what kind of drives them into staying around the game. They can play this game and another game. There's a whole world of games in Slotomania, essentially.
Raise your hand, I can bring the question.
Follow-up question to that. So how important is the construction of these levels that unlock the new content versus the content itself?
Oh, wow. I think both are very important. If you look at some of the other slots games in the market, they don't use the locked slot mechanism, which we do. It's a debate. I think both are very important. The leveling up system, essentially like in any other game in the social gaming industry, gives the user that incentive and motivation wanting to progress in the game, helps retention, etc. So again, both are important. The quality of the content, I think it's probably more important. I think the quality of the content is key, especially in this industry. Our standards to our slot machines are very high. We think we create, or we think and believe that we create probably the best slot machines in the world. And we maintain that standard, because a professional slots player or someone who's very passionate about playing a slots machine can go to a slot machine and say, this is a good machine and this is not a good machine. And the ability to consistently create good content is very hard and is a competitive advantage. So definitely, now to answer your question, definitely I think content is key.
Thank you.
So you can give us a rough idea of the breakdown of the demographics of your typical users, male, female, age range, as much as you can, and share with us.
Yeah, I can't share too much, but I think we fall into the category norm. Essentially, we're more female than male, on the slot machines at least. Of course, in our poker game, it's more male than female. 35 to 55, if I have to generalize. But I think more and more we're finding is that it's not that 40-year-old woman from the Midwest that is the only type of player that converts into a payer. There are more and more demographics that are playing our games and converting into payers as well.
And you mentioned the brutal cost of customer acquisition. What's the breakdown of where you actually get your new customers from?
I can't mention that. That would be the secret sauce. So the next question.
We have a question from the audience.
I have a quick question for you. So you've mentioned 35,000 users walk in through the doors of Caesars Casino, right? Daily.
Just Caesars Palace, yes.
That's just Caesars Palace. Okay, that's correct. So what are you guys doing in terms of bringing those users to download your game? So this is quite one of the hard nuts to crack when it comes to moving people from offline to online.
Right. Okay, so it's a hard nut to crack. We haven't done it in scale yet, but we're doing it and it's going well. The basic numbers are very good. I can't actually discuss the actual tactics that we use, but it's doable and it's happening.
Okay, since I couldn't nail you on the customer acquisition cost, how about another tough question that you may try and
Let's
avoid?
try.
What percentage of your players are actually payers?
Yes, I'm going to avoid that one as well. But I think, again, we're in industry standard. I think actually some of the numbers are public. You can go to our parent company reports and look at the numbers in terms of our conversion rates, et cetera, et cetera. But we're within the industry norm. I think one of our real advantages is that we were first in market. And I think that's something that's helping us until today. 5 years later, that first in market in 2010 was very relevant and still is very relevant today.
Thank you. I think we probably have time for one more question. If anybody wants to raise their hand, don't be shy. Well, if you're very shy, I'm sure you'll be here to answer questions afterwards. And do you have a booth here? Or
we don't have a booth, but some of our user acquisition teams are here, and the biz dev team is here. Me and Adi, who's sitting up here in the front. And we're here until Friday afternoon. So please find us, and if you have any questions, let us know.
Okay, can we have a round of applause for this excellent presentation? Thank you.
Thank you.